In the summer of 1683, Europe faced a crisis that could have reshaped the continent forever. The Ottoman Empire, a vast and powerful state stretching from the Middle East into the Balkans, had long pushed against European borders. Its armies were seasoned, disciplined, and feared across the known world. Europe, by contrast, was fragmented. Kingdoms, principalities, and empires were often at odds with one another. There was no unified force capable of countering the Ottoman advance. The Habsburg Empire, with Vienna at its heart, formed a critical defensive line between Ottoman-controlled territories in the east and Central Europe. Vienna's strategic location on the Danube made it the gateway to Western Europe. The city was also a symbol of Christian Europe, and its capture would have sent a shockwave across the continent. The Ottoman advance was seen not only as a threat to territory, but also to faith itself. Kara Mustafa Pasha, the Grand Vizier, sought to strike at the very heart of the Habsburg realm. He knew that conquering Vienna would open the path to the richest cities of Europe and demonstrate the supremacy of the Ottoman Empire. For the citizens and leaders of Vienna, this was more than a battle for a city. It was a struggle for survival, for culture, and for the very soul of Europe. By the spring of 1683, the Ottoman Empire was ready to strike. For decades, Ottoman armies had pushed steadily westward, capturing fortresses, cities, and entire regions of southeastern Europe. Now their attention turned toward a single prize: Vienna. This was no raid and no border skirmish. It was a full-scale imperial campaign. At its head stood Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, the most powerful man in the empire after the Sultan himself. Ambitious, confident, and determined to secure his legacy, Kara Mustafa believed Vienna was not just a target, but a symbol. If the city fell, the heart of Europe would lie exposed. In the spring, the Ottoman army began its march. Tens of thousands of soldiers moved north and west through the Balkans. Infantry, cavalry, engineers, and artillery advanced together in disciplined formation. Supply trains stretched for miles. Roads shook beneath the weight of men, horses, and cannon. As the Ottoman army passed, villagers emptied. Some fled into forests and mountains. Others submitted without resistance. News of the advancing force spread faster than the army itself, carried by refugees, messengers, and rumor. By early summer, the Ottomans had crossed into the Habsburg frontier. Fortress after fortress fell or surrendered. There would be no relief from the east. Vienna would stand alone. By July 1683, the Ottoman army stood before the walls of the city. Inside Vienna, anxiety spread as news of the approaching Ottoman army reached the walls. Fewer than 15,000 defenders faced a force many times their size. Citizens hurried to fortify homes, gather provisions, and support the city's garrison. Emperor Leopold I observed the preparations from his residence. Though he commanded armies across his realms, relief would not arrive quickly. The responsibility for the city's survival fell largely to the defenders themselves. Engineers reinforced walls, sharpened stakes, and dug trenches. Cannons were positioned along ramparts, ready to repel the inevitable assault. Meanwhile, commanders inspected the troops. Morale varied. Some soldiers felt a grim resolve, others quietly feared the coming storm. Women and children contributed where they could, carrying water, tending the wounded, and maintaining supply lines. The city's entire population was caught in the tension between hope and dread. From above, Vienna appeared calm, but beneath the surface, every alley, square, and wall was a hive of preparation. The city braced itself for a siege that could determine the fate of Europe. By early July 1683, the Ottoman army had reached Vienna. Tens of thousands of soldiers encamped before the city walls. Cannons were rolled into position, siege towers assembled, and trenches dug toward the fortifications. The city braced for the coming storm. Kara Mustafa Pasha oversaw every detail, confident Vienna would fall. Scouts and engineers assessed weak points, while the rhythm of marching troops and hammering saws echoed across the plains. Inside Vienna, defenders checked their positions. Cannons were loaded, walls reinforced, and provisions rationed. Citizens and soldiers alike felt the weight of the coming battle. The first assaults began at dawn. Ottoman artillery thundered, striking the walls, while infantry advanced in formation. The defenders responded with cannon fire and volleys of muskets, holding their ground despite overwhelming numbers. The siege stretched on, day after day. Each attempt to breach the walls was met with fierce resistance. Vienna had become a cauldron of tension and endurance, holding fast against one of Europe's most formidable armies. As the siege dragged on, life inside Vienna grew increasingly desperate. Food was rationed, water carefully guarded, and disease began to spread among soldiers and civilians alike. Days blurred into weeks. Ottoman artillery pounded the walls daily, while miners tunneled beneath the city in an effort to bring the fortifications down from below. Despite exhaustion and fear, Vienna endured. Soldiers held their posts, and citizens continued to support the defense. Every day the city survived became an act of defiance. By mid-August, the defenders were worn thin. Supplies dwindled, casualties mounted, and the walls showed cracks. Yet Vienna still stood, waiting for relief that had not yet come. As Vienna endured, news of the siege spread across Europe. For weeks, Christian rulers hesitated, divided by rivalries and distrust. But the scale of the Ottoman threat forced action. In late August 1683, a coalition began to form. Polish, Austrian, and German forces gathered north of the city. Command fell to King Jan III Sobieski of Poland, a veteran commander known for decisive action. The relief army marched with urgency. Time was running out. If Vienna fell, the road into Central Europe would lie open. The fate of the city, and much more, now depended on whether help could arrive in time. By late August 1683, Vienna's defenders were exhausted. Walls were cracked, supplies low, and casualties mounting. Every cannon shot and musket volley became a fight for survival. The Ottoman army intensified its assault. Siege towers pressed closer, trenches advanced, and miners undermined the walls. Panic threatened to spread among civilians, but soldiers and citizens held their ground. Rumors of approaching relief offered faint hope, yet the city's fate still hung by a thread, and every hour mattered. Vienna teetered on the edge between destruction and salvation. In early September 1683, the relief army reached the hills above Vienna. Ottoman forces, focused on the siege, were caught off guard. On September 12th, the battle began. European troops advanced from the high ground. By afternoon, King John III Sobieski led one of the largest cavalry charges in history. Thousands of Polish hussars thundered down the slopes, smashing into the Ottoman lines. The assault broke the siege. Ottoman forces collapsed and began to retreat. Kara Mustafa Pasha's campaign had failed. Vienna was saved. The Ottoman advance into Central Europe was halted, the balance of power shifted, and the siege of Vienna became a turning point in European history.